Kevin, you're up again. We're dealing with item 7C now, the 10-year capital forecast. I'm looking for a mover to put the item on the table. Moved by Councillor Milne, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Brian? Kevin?
Thank you. Thank you.
He doesn't know what to say to that. Here you go.
This report is our 10-year capital report, and this is our second 10-year capital that we've undertaken here as staff. So last year's 2019 to 2028 was our first go at this. This really is a helpful planning resource for staff and trying to make sure we're looking long range, that we don't have surprises coming at us, and where we're headed. And it also helps us to look at our cash flows and stuff, so that we know what's coming. Like I said, it's a planning tool that gives a longer planning horizon. How it works, it was an internal developed application by our IT staff working with finance. We actually, each project that you see listed in these sheets and stuff actually begins with a sheet that we enter in a project name. We display what function it belongs to. We then put in an estimated useful life. We try to put location if there is location specific. The need or benefit for that, we put that in to remind staff why they're putting this into the program, what about it to remind themselves. Then we show the funding sources for that project, show if is it taxation, is it reserve, is it federal gas tax, et cetera, development charges, et cetera. As well in those project sheets that, and you can look at these, they're in the detailed package that was linked into the report and that is found on the website. As well, it has a schedule where this was costed in the previous year's plan. So that was brought about a number of years ago where some projects were jumping around significantly, and councillors felt they were telling residents that this is going to happen, next year, and then the next year's 5-year plan came out at that time, and wasn't even on the plan. So this was trying to capture that to show, and then from that, in this report, we've tried to look at the next 3 years, that 20, 21, and 22, and identify where staff have made notable changes to the plan so that you're aware, okay? I've provided a binder of hard copies of summaries, so it provides a corporate summary, then it's our function summaries of corporate services, planning, community development, social services, and transportation, public safety. And in behind those will be the function summaries, and then for example, under corporate service, you'd see a clerk and council services summary, which will detail each project that they've put forth from a sheet, which shows the 10 years of when those expenditures are to take place and the funding on those. So I'm not, like I said, it wasn't an attempt to have you read 1,300 and some pages. That's not the intent. It's trying to show how we put this together and where things are. These hard copies, if you wish, you can take them back to local municipal staff. I imagine a lot of the road projects and stuff, when some of those are incurring, and I know Pat talks with the local municipalities and planning on trying to line projects so you're not digging up water services under a road that we just did the year before type thing. So, but it's there for reference, and even your own reference. If someone asks when a road is being considered to be done, then you could look this up and you'd see, is it a plan? The motion reads too as well that this be received, and it's used for planning purposes. And then it goes on to say about that as per the county's purchasing procedure, staff be authorized to procure up to 50% of gross expenditures contained in the first year of the current 10-year capital forecast. Prior to the annual budget being approved, once council has authorized these expenditures being procured via resolution. What that really means is if a department really needs to move forward with something, and it could be, I know transportation uses this sometimes for their trucks, to get their trucks here to get fitted with winter equipment and stuff, they will come in and ask for permission to go and tender that work. So council has two mechanisms here of control on this, is that the staff will be bringing forth a report to you asking that they can procure the item. And once it's procured, they'd also have to bring back an award of that as well. So then you'd have another, but there is times where we're dealing with grants or et cetera, that we have timelines to meet, that we have to accelerate these based on the budget being passed. So we have tried to move our budgets up to being passed in early in the year. I'm a little concerned with this year, with all the unknowns about funding, that might not take place. So that's there, but I just wanted to be clear that that's not a caveat that staff can spend 50% without council's endorsement. That it will come back through this assembly here for your approval, okay? The consolidated package that I have for you is shows the funding needs for 2020 in the amount of $16 million and about $120,000, which is about $965,000 higher than what was approved in the 2019 budget, which was about 1.69%. That 1.69% includes a 1% for transportation services to address our asset management plan, where it said to get to full funding level for those capital assets that we should be increasing our funding by 1% over 15 years. So that is what's been included in here as a planning for that. With council's approval of this, it's just for planning purposes. Staff will then use this on what's in the 2020 capital budget that's in here that year. They'll put it into the annual budget for consideration again, and then they'll be tweaked as we get closer. And again, council at that time will still have another opportunity to say yay or nay to those projects, okay? It's a living document, so if things that get added in during the annual budget process or during the year, or things change, staff, when we update this again 10 years for the next year when we bring it back, things will change and things will move around. It by no means, it's not an approved budget. By the Municipal Act, we're not even allowed to approve a budget to this length in time, so that's why it is a forecast. We've used assumptions in these development of these. What I mean by that is we've used assumptions on Ontario Community Investment Fund, the funding we get for that, gas tax funding, inflation, prices. So things will change, and it's staff's best guess. I was going to take you to maybe about page 37 of the package. It's that table 1 of the corporate capital summary. You'll see across the bottom here that we're roughly about 900, 800,000 a year going through here again. That again is what I've said is that 1% that we're putting forward really for capital road and bridge construction and following our asset management plan. The rest of that will be the other inflationary increases or the other items that have been identified by staff and included in their program. You'll see roughly though, even so we're running about for like 2020 about a 1.69% corporate increase across to about a 1.85 in 2029. So considering if you got 1% in there for roads and bridges, it's not. It seems appropriate. It's not wildly out of line. Okay. I was going to take you to the notable items, and I was going to speak to some of these, and then have some of the directors speak to some of these. If that's, I wasn't going to go through every one, but it was just some of the ones that I think should be highlighted here, and we could speak to those. Okay, if council so wishes. That was where I was going to take this next. So under the first corporate services, clerk and council services here, what we've put in there is an annual reserve amount beginning in 2020. This is based on that we're upgrading the audio video in this council chambers, and we've put a 7-year life cycle on the video for this chambers, and then 15 years for the audio. So what we're putting, and based on what we have this out in procurement right now, and what we're seeing, and based on those results, this is how we based how much money we'll need in those periods when we go to upgrade this stuff. So we're starting to put money away, trying to flatline so we don't have big increases in a certain year. Under finance, we've included $100,000, an expenditure for our corporate asset management plan study, strategies and long-term financial planning. We spoke about this. We have an RFP out right now for this. We believe our $100,000 we have in the 2019 budget is sufficient. It's just that we're seeing that these are taking us 2 to 3 years to finalize, so that based on our neighbors in Bruce County, what their proposal was awarded at, that we'll need $100,000 to complete this. So we've put that into the 2020 to 2029 capital forecast. The multi-user budget software, we've delayed that in the plan. We've pushed it back. We currently have an RFP for work management software in our transportation department, which tracks all of our costs and revenues and expenditures of our roads and bridges. It's just staff resources. We don't believe that we can, it's going to take probably 2 years, 18 months to finalize that software, and then to introduce another multi-budgeting software during the same time just wouldn't be successful. So that's not achievable, so we pushed it back. The human resources, I'm going to turn to Grant McLevy to speak to those two.
Okay, so there's a couple of items in here for human resources, and one is something that was approved quite a while ago. It's the job hazard analysis and the job demands analysis. What these documents are is they help us get people back to work who have been injured, who are ill, and so on. It breaks down all the information, and it really speeds up the process and gets people back off the couch and back into the workplace a lot quicker, and it has helped us tremendously. So it was $160,000 to get these done, starting in 2016, I believe. So this is an accrual, or this is just putting about $10,000 away each year, so that in 10 years we can do a review. Likely we won't have to do all of the jobs, and that's why there's we haven't put as much money in as it would have to cost the first time. So that's the job hazard, job demands analysis. And the second one is we were going to do an updated organizational review of the Human Resources Department this year, but with the long-term care and Sienna, all of these things coming into play, we really thought that we wanted to see exactly how much work needed to be done by this HR department. And so there were some changes with that. So we've asked to put it off for 2020 instead of getting that done this year. So those are the two changes from Human Resources that Kevin wanted me to talk to.
The next is information technology, and I'm going to let Jody McEachran speak to those notable changes.
Kevin, are you, is it okay to have questions as we go? I think because there's different people coming up. Is that okay with council? You can ask questions as it goes.
The main IT projects have been focusing on the work that we've been discussing with council for the past several years, which is mainly around putting hardware lifecycle management on all the core components of our network. We had planned a fairly large project this year to do the wireless internet access points that are here and the other 20-some locations that we have around the county, including the new Sydenham campus. That is just a fairly big project, and a lot of our other projects are kind of running over, so we've decided to push that one back to 2020. Continuing along the same lines, we're looking at replacing the hardware that is in long-term care homes. So they have some of their own servers running applications specific to the homes, but also with some redundancy for the applications that run out of here. With that project, we'd be looking at replacing essentially the IT cabinet that holds the equipment. We are looking at disaster recovery, which is on the books for this year, but will be a continuing cost. And the other one that isn't in there, but I will just mention it because it will be of interest to the local municipalities, is that next year the province is reflying their aerial imagery, the SWOOP project they do every 5 years. That tends to be one of the more sought-after GIS products that we publish both to municipal staff and to the public.
Thanks, Jody. Next item is planning community development, and I'm just going to let Scott, he's going to try his best. Randy's on holidays, so Scott's going to speak to the item on the trails.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. The only matter we have on this list is a culvert replacement on our CP rail trail, and this is culvert number 80. It's in the south end of the county, about 1.29 kilometers south of Victoria Street in Dundalk. The project was initially analyzed in 2016-2017 by our bridge and culvert assessment report at that time. At that time, it recommended that minor repairs would be needed on this culvert, but since then, our own county bridge crew have been out and looked at the structure and determined that a full replacement is needed rather than just minor repairs. So we've actually been out to market on that this year just for the geotechnical work, and we got some preliminary results this morning. Prior to the results this morning, they were estimating that the project would cost about $300,000, but we're working with our geotechnical consultant as well as our own bridge crew to look at options to hopefully bring this total down. Once we get this work from the consultant, we'll have a better idea of the exact cost that can be put in the 2020 budget for council's consideration.
Thanks, Scott. Tourism, I don't think there's anybody here, but all the difference here on the tourism one is we purchased we had been leasing a vehicle, a Honda Pilot to be specific. We purchased that with council's approval. So what we've done is updated and we've extended the life cycle on this. So we have, if you looked at the prior year package, you would have seen a replacement happening in 2028. We've extended the life cycle on it so it's fallen off, so it's outside of the 29, and it'd be 2030 before it'd be replaced. So that's the only change there. There's Grey Root staff here, so I'll ask them to speak to some of their specific items.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, I was going to address the general store in the church. So both of those projects come from our Heritage Building Reserve, and we're looking at building the store next year. We've gotten about $10,000 so far raised by the Friends of Morriston, and the church is on the schedule for 2022. So we also created a new reserve called Front of House. So Front of House is everything a visitor sees when they walk through the front door. So we're 15 years old already, which seems hard to believe, and so we just want to make sure that what's in the entranceway when people come in really makes a positive impact. So perhaps changes to the cafe or the way the front desk is laid out. We still have the old triads, so we're hoping to update that. So I think this is a good reserve. And then also, after talking with Karen Noble, our archivist in the archives, we realized that the microfiche reader was 18 years old, and they just hoped it would keep on going indefinitely. And we said, how much does the new one cost? And it's $20,000. So we decided we needed to add that to the capital. The rest of the projects, I'm going to let Ted Noble speak about it. He's our operations manager, and he has been very, very hardworking and creative. We have so many capital projects happening because the building is 15 years old. So Ted, take the rest of them.
Yes, on my list is the flat roof replacement. As part of the 2019 approved budget, we've already started some repairs and some replacement. We're doing this in different stages, so over the next few years we'll be doing other parts of the roof as we go along. And another added item on here is the repair to asphalt and curbs in the parking lot. There's some cracks that we've been sealing up, and we're going to be addressing that in 2021 to make those repairs more permanent, to extend the life of the parking lot and the curbs for Grey Roots. Repairing the drywall in the temporary exhibit hall. We've added this because for the past number of years we've been changing colors on these walls twice a year just to freshen up the gallery for different exhibits. So what we've ended up with is drywall with a significant layer of paint, which is probably just as thick as the drywall is now. So going forward, we're hoping to reduce the amount of paint we put on so we can have a more general color that we can use over and over and over again, and we'll be able to extend the life of the walls in this area. The Heritage Village, painting the farmhouse. This is part of the BCA's on the life cycle, particularly the farmhouse because it's a wooden clapboard. The modern paints don't like to stick to the wood, so we need to keep refreshing it over a 5-year life cycle. Big expenditure coming up in 2021 are the rooftop unit replacements. And again, on the inside of the building for 2021, we're looking at also replacing our heat pump system for the environmental control within the museum.
Thanks, Ted. Any questions about Gray Roots? Next would be social services, and I'll let Barb speak to that.
Thanks, Kevin. Good afternoon. So we just have a little bit of capital. Mostly the services provided by social services are direct services to people. We had a capital plan for some landscaping at our Early On Center in Hanover. But because of some changes with the province and funding announcements, we don't know where we're really heading into next year as of yet. So it didn't make sense to spend a lot of money in 2019, and we've deferred that into 2020 along with the plans that we already had in place. We are doing some work there, but not enough for it to be capital. It's more operational, and so we're fixing some line fences and removing some rotten wood and things like that. But other than that, it's very small. So that's the reason for the change this year.
Next would be housing, and housing is a fair few, so I've asked them just to kind of identify the more significant ones.
You beat me to it.
I'll spare you. Housing has had a 10-year capital plan actually for quite a few years, and so I think when you first look at your BCA and you stretch it out, what you're looking at in the last couple of years is exactly what is in your BCA. And as you get closer to those years, things change. So that's why there's probably been a few more changes. Plus, we have 27 buildings and 235 homes, so there's quite a few of the projects on here. Number one change would be our common room furniture. A lot of our furniture in our common rooms is aging. It's also wood. There has been a change to fire regulatory codes, in that they're recommending that furniture in the common rooms no longer be wooden. So we are looking at doing changes over the next couple of years. Our duty to accommodate requests. We are governed by the RTA, the Residential Tenancies Act, so if someone does require an accommodation, such as maybe a raised toilet, door operations, walk-in showers, that sort of thing, we are obligated to provide those. And with our aging population, we're finding that we are having quite a few more in recent years, so we wanted to ensure that there was money in the budget to cover that. If we look down at brick repointing, that is one that we have added on for this year also. Our custodian did notice that we had an area in one of our buildings that was splitting and there was a bit of spall, so we wanted to make sure that that got taken care of. We have a number of projects on there that are from former Golden Town. So they are new to our budget. They were on their capital budget, but they're new to ours, and so we're just inserting them in. We have a number of them on for 2020. There is a bit of a backlog in the projects that have been done, so we've got quite a few for 2020 and 2021, and those are all being funded through the Golden Town reserve that we received when it was downloaded to us. Roof replacement. You'll note we do have a roof replacement that's happening in Meaford. We have moved that up because it didn't winter as well. We didn't want to leave it another year, but we were able to find a couple of other roofs. For instance, the one in Margaret Elizabeth in Markdale, that actually looks like it can handle another year. So we've just kind of looked at swapping out some of those to make it work on paper and money-wise.
After housing, we have Grey Gables.
Thank you, Kevin. For long-term care, I'll speak to Grey Gables and Lee Manor. Renata's on vacation. So for Grey Gables, there's two projects noted. One is a request for additional funding for a laundry project, laundry equipment, and that's it's an additional $15,000 that have been added in to accommodate structural changes and some engineered changes to meet the TSSA code, some changes there. And a new project for 2021, which is some premise backflow protection system installed to protect the potable water that's coming into the home. For Lee Manor, there's a couple of projects. So floor replacement, the change there is a reduction in request of $75,000, and that's related, the home staff looked at alternatives to flooring in the basement, and they've decided that they're going to paint the concrete. It's as functional as putting flooring down and doesn't need to be replaced at a huge cost, and it's a reduction of $75,000. The other project is a redevelopment of the resident common area and staff area on the main floor. And this is a new project request, and it's a project to update the ice cream parlor, which is also, it's the tuck shop, and a social area to make it more accessible for the residents that use that space. And included in this project is a request to improve some staffing space to include lockers and space for staff coats and shoes. And there hasn't been a lot of work done in that area in a number of years. The sanitary waste removal system. This is an increase. This has been on the capital plan for some time, and this is related to the replacement of some pumps used in this system that have been refurbished over the years, and they're now ready to be completely replaced. And driveway and sidewalk repair is slated, it's new for 2021, and this is to update and make safe the concrete sidewalks and to resurface the parking lot way down the road in 2029. And I'll try not to take Kevin's papers with me.
For Rockwood Terrace, we had one additional project we added for 2020. That's related to our second floor servery off the dining room and includes a new steam table and reach-in fridge for that servery. I'd also just like to note that for Rockwood, with the anticipation of redevelopment, we are very careful with our capital and what we spend, knowing that it may be short-term that we're dealing with it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Mackey?
Jennifer, could you please pass on to Renata and her staff our sincere thanks for saving $75,000 on floor painting? All right, thank you.
Next up will be Pat Hood with Transportation Services.
And you've given him the same hook as Anne Marie?
Just, I'll try to go fairly quickly, thanks, Kevin. I've talked enough today. I'm just going to go and highlight a few of these changes as well. I wanted to just thank Matt Mark and Graham Wilson and Trevor Ireton in our department, and Calvin and Joanna in finance, who've been a great help, because our stuff does get pretty complicated with DCs and all that. So I'm just going to start on page 46, highlight some of the changes. So the first job is the overlay on Grey Road 40. I'm not going through every one. I'm just using this to talk about something else. But a lot of those overlays are, you'll see them in here. They're kind of moved from year to year. So we went from 2 inches to 4 inches of asphalt, from like 50 mils to 100. So we're kind of trying to squeeze as many of those overlays in as we can. And basically the full reconstruction, the expensive stuff, we're kind of trying to keep it going and put it off as long as we can and put money into keeping good roads good. So I'm not going to go over every overlay because there's a lot of them kind of moving around in there. So I think I'm on page 46 here. 2020 Orchardville Bridge removal. It says it's new to the program. It's an old abandoned bridge. We've had it closed for a long time. We're hoping to remove it. We're still going through the EA process, but we're seeing doing that in 2020. 17B, which is Nichols Gully, we've moved it from 2020 to 2021 because Owen Sound is taking the 10th Street Bridge out. Just when we got thinking about that, we didn't really need to pile on to the, commuter. He's already kind of waiting for 10th Street Bridge to open. We didn't think he needed to go through construction at 17B too. So we thought we'd just put it off for a year. We'll maintain it for a year and just buy ourselves another year. On page 46 and 47, there's two jobs in the 19 and 21 area of Blue Mountains. So there's the roundabout, which was scheduled for 2020 at 19 and 21, and the 4-laning between basically the new roundabout and the existing roundabout, which is scheduled for 2025. We've coordinated those to hopefully come up with 1 year of pain in 2022 and do those jobs together. And there's another roundabout that's developer driven in that piece as well, so it's going to be a busy year over there. But page 47, Gray Road 27 in Durham, West Gray is hoping to move a job up from 28 to 21. They have a development going in that area and they want to urbanize Gray Road 27, so we're in on that project. Page 47, Gray Road 10 in Scone. We met recently with Bruce County. We're analyzing that intersection in Scone, and pending the study study findings, we're hoping for not a huge job. At one point, there was the Scone roundabout and buying buildings, and we're kind of backing off into minor changes. The intersection has had no history of accidents, and we're getting that study right now to see if there's any sort of close calls or any safety hazards there. On to page 49, facilities, domes, and depots. Patrol D depot near Flesherton, hoping for 2021. And then Patrol A, there was a bridge shed. We've kind of pushed that off for a few years. Same type of thing. Let's see how the Patrol D depot goes, and maybe with the bridge crew could be stationed out of somewhere else, or who knows what'll happen with all these changes lately. So on to page 50 for machinery. Warren will be happy about this one. This kind of came out of his visit to our sign shop. We realized how old our printer and our plotter were. Over 10 years old, and anybody with a 10-year-old computer knows it's not great. So we've put that into our capital plan now, and for the next purchase as well. So our sign shop staff will spend less time waiting and hopefully more time making signs. So
Thank you.
So that's the 10-year capital forecast that brought here, and again, it's just really asking for approval that we use this as a planning document to create our 2020 budget, but it's also a reference to you to understand when we're planning projects, and we tried to identify some notable items that have changed here, so just that we don't want to surprise a counselor, when speaking to a resident heard something that's moved or something that you have a resource here available to look into. So it's a helpful document to finance staff and to the departmental staffs of why they've created these jobs with these document sheets and stuff. It's a lot of work, I admit that, but it's a good, transparent process for us to build these projects into a plan.
Councillor Bartnicki?
Through you, Mr. Warden, thank you very much to you and staff for this comprehensive study. We know that the province has suggested that all municipalities look for a 4% savings. Are we doing that here as well?
We're going to have to find savings because the amount of provincial funding just on our operating side is significant. So we're going to have to, I still have to, as treasurer, look at, and this was where our consultant with our asset management is going to help more define our capital needs. But what we have so far, based on the data we have so far, says that we should be spending more in capital. It's going to even cost us more money. So we're looking at that in this plan, but we're going to have to try to find means to balance this all out, to bring something in that you as council is comfortable in putting forth to the ratepayers.
Thank you. So I'll now call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Moving next to Owen Sound with the Leith Woods. Need a mover? Why don't we look over to Owen Sound for movers? Thank you. And Councillor Thomas and Councillor O'Leary, would you like to second? Very good. Sarah?
Just gotta pull this up. So this is a very similar application to the one that was presented at the last meeting. It's actually the property that's immediately to the east of it. It was an application made by Leithwoods Investments. And again, it was the same situation. The application was made after some of the work had been completed. It was discovered around the same time as the other one from the last committee meeting. The same reasons, obviously the same issues. They're having invasive buckthorn as well as a lot of ash tree showing signs of emerald ash borer. They wanted to return it back to the agricultural use as it had been previously. The last time they estimated was late 80s. So, sorry, this isn't a very good on the screen there, but this was the plan that was brought forward. There was a reforestation plan submitted with the application, and this area, the largest area is the area that's proposed to be cleared. The other areas are proposed to have restoration or rehabilitation, and then you can barely see it, but there is a windrow proposed both along the north and west side of the property. So as per the minor exemption process, we do circulate neighbors as well as a number of organizations and agencies. No comments from the neighbors. Grey Sauble Conservation Authority had no concerns. They just wanted permits if they were required. And the City of Owen Sound had no concerns as well. Our bylaw enforcement officer noted that the trees that had already been removed were mainly ash and buckthorn. And he was satisfied with the plan that was submitted for the rehabilitation. So as such, we are recommending approval of the minor exemption, and I certainly am available for any questions if there's any questions.
Are there any questions, council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to item E, grant. Need someone to put it on, make the motion. Need a mover, please. Councillor Burley, seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. Grant, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Warden and Council. We have another collective agreement here for you, and this is for the Ontario Nurses Association, and those nurses are in all 3 of our homes for the aged. This report's a little bit different, and the negotiations are a little bit different with ONA because we are part of a Me Too clause with many other homes for the aged and hospitals where there is a central bargaining process, and all of the hospitals come up with a wage, and we have a Me Too clause with that so that we remain competitive. We've had that clause for about 25 years now. And it's worked out fairly well for us, whereas the central bargaining can often bargain a better wage increase than we would be able to here at the county level. On top of the wages that you see in the report of 1.4 and 1.75, we also negotiated an $800 annual mental health benefit for the nurses. And we did this as a result of the arbitration award through the central bargaining unit. And basically we were told by the conciliator that they would receive this at arbitration. So as to save the cost of the arbitration, we went ahead and granted that, that increase in the benefit plan. That's pretty much all there is to this report. You have it in front of you, and we are just looking for a recommendation and to ratify this report.
Right. Questions? I see none. Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That too is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Grant. Item F, a letter from Clearview. Get a mover, please. Councillor Bartnicki, Councillor Milne. Kim, are you going to speak to this at all?
I just wanted to, Council, provide you with a bit of an update with regard to the Simcoe County Road 91, Clearview 2627. Last Friday, the warden and I attended the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus. the warden had an opportunity to speak to the warden of Simcoe County, and they agreed that George would go back and have some discussions within Simcoe, and then the two of them could meet and discuss next steps, I think, and whether or not there was an opportunity for any further adjustments. So I wrote to Mark Aiken following that as well, and so looking to hear about that meeting very shortly.
Oh, sorry. It's Councillor McQueen.
So thank you for that information. So looking at this correspondence, and I certainly just supported receive for information, it talks about red tape, and it talks about the NEC's role, and it talks about our roads going through the NEC. Certainly, we had a little brief discussion this last week at our joint Blue Mountain Task Force meeting. Randy was there at the time. I think it's simple to say that if you're doing regular road maintenance or surfacing a road, maybe it does make sense. But I know I will probably say that that a lot of those are probably director approval. They won't need to go to the commission if it's routine. So other than having that process to make the application, most of them would be a routine approval. As we know, with regards to the Clearview issue, that's more than just a routine maintenance job. So I think we just park it there, receive it for information. I know there was an article in the Ontario Good Roads magazine. I don't know if those that get it, I think something's called Good Measures or something like that. There was also an article from the mayor of Clearview making an editorial comments in there, and I'll leave it at that. So.
Okay, Councillor Soever?
Yes, I read this correspondence, and I know we both Mayor McKean and I have actually worked on this issue, and we've consulted with various community groups, and I know as the Troop Blue Mountains Council has been frustrated by this regulation at times as well, and as a mining person, I find myself a strange role here, saying that actually regulation is good, because what it does is when you have this regulation, you know, yes, it can slow things down, but it enforces good practice and it protects things. Whereas in the past there wasn't a lot of regulation in the mining industry, and then you get bad actors who, you know, do things because they're not governed, and that gives the whole industry a bad name. Now, looking at this regulation, I read it last night, our normal road maintenance, cleaning of ditches and things like that is already exempt from this. This regulation only refers to replacing a road with a road that is substantially different, changing something from seasonal use to all year round. So it's quite specific. And I mean, this letter, obviously, although it doesn't mention it, the 7-year delay that's referred to is specific to County Road 2627. And, you know, I did have a discussion with Mayor Measures, and he said, well, you just push the road through and then you let the traffic pound the gravel in. And I think this is exactly the kind of thing that this regulation is designed to prevent, is bad practice. I know the regulation also covers all kinds of development in the Niagara Escarpment Commission lands, and I know there's been some frustration in the town of Blue Mountains, but as the mining industry sometimes gets frustrated with delays by regulation, but in the end, if you follow the rules, you end up with a much better product, you end up with a much brighter future for the industry in general, and in this case, the province and the residents. So I would say we should receive this, but we should go further and direct staff to write a letter to say that we disagree with the reduction of, you know, we think regulation should be reasonable, but there is a place for good regulation of practices so that bad actors don't take advantage of the situation.
Okay. Are you making a motion?
Yes.
To amend? Okay, then I need a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Bartnicki. Now we're discussing the amendment. which is to, in addition to receiving, sending a letter off. Any discussion? Councillor Bartnicki.
For you, Mr. Warden, I think the gist of this is really in the second last paragraph, asking for support to remove the powers vested in the Niagara Escarpment Commission. And I think that the commission itself and those who have made up that commission over the many years are in a better position to judge the rationale behind why these regulations exist. And as far as county councils go, or municipal councils, the actors change and the conditions change. We know a lot more today about the environment than we did even 7 years ago. We also know a lot more about the impacts on the environment, in this case, because the conditions for traffic going through this area have changed remarkably. We have some measures that say it's more than tripled what it was 7 years ago. That's a decision that if we made today and removed that, we might not have an opportunity to do anything about down the road.
Anyone else? Councillor McQueen?
Through you, Mr. Warden, just to our Director of Transportation, I don't know if you're able to comment of any correspondence or any experiences you've had for road work?
Through you, Mr. Warden, yeah, the one thing I would say, we have had some issues with the NEC in their timelines more than anything else. You know, we've put a permit in January. You know, they told us it was coming in May. It came in May, but then May was actually the start of the 30-day comment period. 119, it cost us about $40,000, I think, for the delay of the contractor, but it wasn't as much the approval as the time to get the approval. It wasn't like it was an onerous process to get the approval. It just took a lot longer than we hoped it would, because we thought we had, you know, given plenty of notice. But generally, I mean, the staff there to work with has been excellent for most of our projects, but because ours are pretty low impact. We're not building, you know, a road from scratch typically, but that's all I would say about that, yeah.
Okay, I'll call the question on the amended, I'm sorry, Councillor Swaber.
Yeah, and Councillor Bartnicki brings up a good point in that one paragraph she refers to, because they don't have the right to overrule municipal authority to repair and improve existing roads within the right-of-way when it's resurfacing or even ditching or anything like that. But if it is a rebuild or a replacement or an upgrade, then they do. So I don't know what this letter is asking us to do, because it doesn't allow them to overrule the municipal authority for minor repairs within the existing right-of-way.
Councillor McQueen.
Oh, no, it's okay. Go ahead.
I was just wondering if there were a slight amendment would be to that, would be that with regulations, with the provision to improve timelines, as you were mentioning, or something like that, just in the sense of the timelines of moving it through, whether it's expedited for certain things where it's longer and I guess that goes back to whether it's a Class A or Class C environmental assessment, which we know that this particular one was more the bigger one. So I don't know if there's a slight amendment just in the sense of trying to improve timelines is what you're saying.
Yeah, through you again, Mr. Warden. Yeah, I don't know if it's been better since then. We're putting them in earlier. I don't know if their timelines are faster. It did seem like sort of a one-off hurdle to us, and it hasn't been terrible since. It's not something that it was on Transportation's radar to really lodge a complaint about, for example.
So that's an amendment to the amendment, so. Oh, okay. All right, got it, received. All right, I'm going to call the question. Oh, yes.
I have a question. This 7-year delay, do we know that it was all the responsibility of the Niagara Escarpment Commission, or were the delays from the municipal side as well?
Good question, Pat. Do we? Councillor Soever?
Yes, the file, as I recall, I've read quite a bit of it. They they did do a study which was rejected in about a 12-1 because it didn't address environmental concerns. And so they were asked to go back to the drawing board. They've since submitted another study which has numerous flaws in it, including bird counts were not done during the nesting season. The new study actually proved that the first study was deficient in that it identified new wetlands which were not identified by the first study. So the whole reason for the delays is people aren't doing the job properly in the first place.
Councillor Fleet? All right. I think we're ready to call the question then, right? On the amendment. All those in favor? Looks like that's carried. Thank you. So now we vote on the main motion, please, as amended. And so all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, moving right along. Do we want to deal with the consent, or can we deal with this other business first? Oh, okay. All right. Yes, we're going to go back to that item E that was pulled, right? Okay. So item 6E, City of Owen Sound correspondence. Need someone to put that on the floor. Councillor Soever, Councillor Bartnicki. And who pulled it? Actually, it was Councillor Soever?
Yes. I really appreciate the efforts of Owen Sound to put this before the indirect request that the county agree take a leadership role to initiate discussions with its member municipalities, because these community safety and well-being plans, they're supposed to be in place by 2021, January 1st, 2021. So we only have a year and a half. And we started looking at that in the town of Blue Mountains, and we see this is not going to be a simple exercise, because there are a number of boxes you have to tick. Obviously, community safety and well-being starts with the police force. And then they ask you to look at mental health, social services, childcare, a lot of other things. And when we started looking at this at our police services board meeting, we went, well, wait a minute, we're the Collingwood Town of Blue Mountains detachment, so we're going to have to work with Collingwood on that. Now, they get their mental health, they have mental health officers, but they also, those officers get their support from the Collingwood General Marine Hospital mental health team. And then we looked at social services. Most of that is in the town of Blue Mountains is BVO with support from the county, but childcare is county. So the sooner we can figure out these relationships and how we need to integrate these plans, because the better off we'll be, because I don't want to be doing that in November 2020.
Okay, I'll ask our CAO to.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Some of you attended a meeting at the Grey Bruce Health Unit earlier this year, where the folks from the province came and spoke to both the intent of the plan and some of the resources that were available to folks to help them. And there was discussion at that time about a role for the health unit and or the counties to try and move this project forward. And so where things stand at this time, I have a draft project plan that was meant to be undertaken in a collaborative way between ourselves, the health unit, and Bruce County. This would create a template that was closer to being specific to our needs than what is available from the province. And then undertaking the consultation at each one of the member municipalities in an effort to get a product that is as close to final as it can be, but then each individual municipality, and this was always true, would need to do some final customization and pass a bylaw in support of the plan ahead of the deadline that Councillor Soever has mentioned. So I have a meeting with Bruce County and the Health Unit next week, and my intention was to bring that project plan and a staff report to our next council meeting so that you could review that and provide any feedback.
Okay. Councillor Robinson?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Warden, that is one of the reasons that I was looking at having item E, echo, if you will, in the
Right, yeah.
phonetic. For the Grey County to take a look at it. My particular position would be that Grey County Council, whether it's within today's meeting or in a meeting coming up rather soon, that Grey County Council take a leadership role through the administrative staff and assist our lower tier members with this. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of duplication. I'm envisioning templates with respect to this type of plan. So I would look forward to that report that addresses this specifically. So with that, I would ask my fellow county councillors to amend the motion before us and to include a staff report back which addresses the potential leadership role from the county.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we really need that. I mean, if you think it's important, I think staff have received that. Our CAO has already indicated that she's planning to bring a report to the next meeting. I don't know if we need a special motion for that, but if you feel it's needed, you can move it and see if someone wants to second it.
Yeah, I would like to see that it
Okay.
is formalized in our minutes. If any of my colleagues would be so inclined, I would appreciate that.
Okay. So moved and seconded by Councillor Bartnicki. Any discussion on the amendment? Which is just simply adding that staff will bring a report back. Then I'll call the question on the on the motion to amend. All those in favor? That's carried. And now on the main motion, which is now amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, turning now to item 8A, and we are looking at preparing for AMO and AMO delegations. There was a sheet handed out this morning. You all have it. Do we need to get a motion on the, because we haven't got really what it is yet.
No,
do we?
we'll discuss them.
Okay, okay, great. Any discussion about, you see, Kim, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I will. So, thank you, Council. What I've prepared here is simply a draft of items that we've touched on at various times in our deliberations here, ministries, topics, and some potential attendees. In the past, we haven't always discussed who would like to attend a particular delegation, and then we find ourselves a little bit scrambling when we have to provide that information to the province. So I thought it would be best if people had a specific interest in something to if you could note it now, it just makes it a little bit simpler. So I'll just go through them quickly. So I know that now Ministry of Health and Ministry of Long-Term Care are two separate things, but on the sheet that you use to sign up from AMO, they're still showing as a single ministry, so I don't know what you do about that. I'll just have to apply as they've provided an ability for us to do so, but there to talk to our long-term care redevelopment application and funding, and also the application process for new beds. There was an earlier discussion as well about physician recruitment and whether or not that was a topic that we wish to raise when we were with the minister as well. So if everybody's okay with that. And again, with the attendees, and you can let me know later about attendance or not, if you wish. Ministry of Transportation, the municipality of Southgate and ourselves both have a community grant transportation, as does the city of Owen Sound. Southgate had spoken to me about going with a joint delegation to ask for some consideration of flexibility and innovation in delivering the program. We've submitted something but there's still, I think, some investigation and research that we'd like to do. Some things have changed since that application first went in, and we know that we need to do a lot of consultation with each of yourselves to make sure that we've got a product that's going to be right for this. So just kind of putting that on their radar screen. Training colleges and universities, this is about, this is,
Sorry,
oh, I
Councilor McQueen.
apologize. I apologize.
Councilor McQueen, go ahead.
Something that we've talked about at our council that has been brought to us a number of times was a crossing area in Markdale. For Grey Gables, we've had that request from the community group, you know, the Friends of Grey Gables, along with the new hospital, what's coming in there, the idea, you know, there's a new Tim Hortons there, you know what happens there.
So you want a mid-block pedestrian crossing
Yeah.
on Highway 10 there?
Yeah,
Okay.
there, and also it's been brought to our attention a number of different times, also in Flesherton, because of the public school and the library is across the street, and crossing there. So that was something that we had talked about as a municipal council, you know, so maybe that could be a joint type of thing.
They're both county roads?
Well, they're in, yeah, but they're empty, it's Highway 10.
Right, right.
It's MTO, but,
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can do that.
Councilor Soever?
Yes, an issue that's come up with this County Road 91 and also previously with Highway 26 is perhaps a delegation or a joint delegation with the town of Blue Mountains on discussing how do we coordinate regional transportation plans. Because we know that Grey County has its plan, we have Simcoe County has its plan, and then the Ministry of Transportation has its plan, and we don't seem to coordinate. We seem to want to build super highways at the Ministry of Transport and spend a lot of money, whereas you could work with the counties and distribute traffic onto regional roads and put off major expenditures, because we don't know what the landscape is. But there is no regional transportation planning. Like the people that go up to Wyerton, they pass through many communities in Grey County, including the various lights and crosswalks that Paul was talking about at the schools. But you know, there doesn't seem to be any regional planning until an EA is done, but those are done very rarely. And so, like, we have issues with Highway 26. Everybody that comes to Owen Sound now uses Highway 26, but it's full. But there are alternate routes, but there's been no consideration of that. So just talking about how do we better use resources to use the roads that we have already.
Okay, appropriate?
It's absolutely, I'm just worried about in 15 minutes. Is that something that Town of Blue Mountains are you requesting a delegation on that? And then, and the county support to it? Because maybe that's the way to handle that.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Town of the Blue Mountains will make the request, and maybe we can come along and support it then, okay?
The next item was with training colleges and universities. This was about sustainable funding for the Georgian College Owen Sound campus, and also furthering the interests of Georgian in their ability to deliver a full Bachelor of Science in Nursing program through Georgian rather than the joint one they have now with York. Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks. And this is, again, a joint delegation brought to our attention by Grey Sable Conservation Authority. Inclusion of integrated watershed management as core to the Conservation Authority's mandate, something that's been changed under Bill 108. The desire to continue to see municipal councilors as board members, raising the implications of funding reductions for drinking water source protection, and really emphasizing to the ministry that the conservation authorities should be engaged in the development of new Conservation Authority Act regulations. Got it, Kathy? Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Just changing who the attendees would be. I won't be there, but, sorry.
Marion Kepke is our vice chair. She will be attending, so you could just put Vice Chair Kepke.
Okay, perfect. I'll do that. Natural resources and forestry, again, via Grace Sabo, flood risk reduction and reinstatement of funding to conservation authorities to deliver flood risk reduction, and a consultation with conservation authorities on the strategy for that. Again, these are Bill 108 changes.
Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So if a member of this council wished to be added to the delegation, are you simply looking for an email?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, just, yeah, if you want to be part of those two, then I'll just add your name. Yep.
That would be fine.
Okay.
Do you want to be one?
Ministry of Education, what we know from the province is that our children's services funding has been reduced, and that will have service delivery impacts as well. We have some concerns with the implication of the child care tax benefit on families and their ability to be able to cash flow that when they are in some need. So wanting to speak to them about that. MCCSS, so this is the old Community and Social Services. Again, our Ontario Works funding is being impacted, and as well as the province looks at the ODSP eligibility, we anticipate that we're going to see some clients who were on ODSP coming back onto Ontario Works, which again has implications for the county's budget, and so we want to raise those. And I noted Owen Sound counselors in those two things, since, you know, as the regional center, you do have the most significant caseload. There are a couple of others that were potentials that I added. Paramedic services and the funding reductions and some of the changes there. There's also, when Dr. Arrow was here the last time, with regard to the health unit and that municipal relationship going forward with the health unit and the funding formula for the health unit, if we want to raise any of that issue. And then Councillor Keaveney asked about economic development and trade, job creation. There have been a couple of things that we have raised through economic development. The support for the Business Enterprise Center. The BEC for us has a small budget and 2 people and does a world of work. You know, we would really like to signal to the government how important that is to us. A larger question would be one of international students, their ability to work, especially international students' ability to move into the apprenticeship stream would be something we would like to see.
Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I would very much like County Council to consider adding to our delegation list the paramedic services funding. It's important.
I think we'll add paramedic and the health unit, right? It's quite a list. We'll see what we get, right? Anything else from anyone? Anything missing from this list? Thank you very much for putting that together. Okay, so do we need to make a motion?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm looking for a mover that we make the delegation request as outlined in this document and as discussed. Councillor Carlton. And do I see Burley's hand? Yeah. Well, maybe I'll go with Gamble, because I haven't got Gamble in there yet, yeah. Okay. Any discussion? I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And I think that's it, right? Any notices of motion? Seeing none, I'll call, is that for adjournment? Yes, moved by Councillor Milne that we adjourn, seconded by Councillor, he beat you to it, holy cow.
Getting slow in his old age.
All those in favor, any opposed? We are, are we good? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.